make sure that our encouragement is in him. Because any encouragement that you assume upon yourself that has nothing to do with Christ is a hollow encouragement. And it will do you no good. Brother Jeff, man of God, go ahead.
Well, you know me, Mr. Military. If you want to think about trials and such that train us and refine us, just look at SEAL training.
Oh God.
Those men don't become the greatest fighting force in the world by sitting in a classroom studying how to do what they do.
Right.
I mean, they are almost abused in their training, but it's to harden them, to make them hard, to make them tough, to make them be able to face the enemy. And that's what we are too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right. And sometimes, you have to be pushed to certain limits in order to go beyond. And it's discipline. It's discipline. And we have this as Christians. And that discipline that we need to have has to do with improving upon our spiritual relationship, our relationship with our Lord and Savior, and our relationship with one another. And it can be very difficult. It can be very difficult. Job says in verse 13, he says, if I wait, the grave is my house. I have made my bed in the darkness. He sees the grave as his settled dwelling. That's his place. He thinks this is where he is on the border of. And what he's saying is that if I wait, he's talking about, he's saying like waiting, it's not going to promise you any kind of restoration. Only thing that the waiting guarantees is burial. You're going to be in the grave. You got this picture of somebody who seems, I don't know what the words would have been used in that time, but I'm sure it is akin to what we refer to as depression. And that's what it seems like. It feels like that's the best word I can think of. Maybe there's a different word, some words that we can use, but he seems to be talking as one who's encountering depression. And it would be hard not to, especially when you consider the suddenness of what he's going through, the suddenness. And so look what he says. If I wait, the grave is in my house. If I wait, death is what follows. And he says, the grave is in my house. And then he says, I have made my bed in darkness. So now this imagery of the house and the bed seems to suggest his personal resigning of himself to death as his only remaining certainty. In other words, nothing else in his life seems to be certain. Job was probably a man that was full of plans. He was probably a very organized soul. My brother's like that. I'm the exact opposite. My brother, he is super organized about everything. He knows he has everything about his life and his life mapped out. That's just how he is. I'm more on the reckless side, but he is very structured. He's a very structured individual. Everything he does is planned, everything. And so Job is probably like that. And I say that only because that's what he's talking about. He seems to be addressing intentions and hopes that it seems that providence has sort of become a speed bump for him to do. And it's much more than a speed bump. He feels as though his grave is about to seize him. Darkness is about to envelop him. And so he's showing himself as one who is in despair. And despair, not of God and what he has coming with God, but despair in terms of his earthly recovery. Like, I don't think he sees that the situation he's in, he's going to come out. There is no way, I would say, there's no way that he could have possibly anticipated what the end of this book tells us happens to Job. I don't believe for 1 second he had any indication that what he got was going to be what he expected. Not in his wildest imaginations. I don't believe that he thought that. Sister Mariah, what do you think?
I did want to hear your thoughts on verse 12, but you didn't go into explaining verse 12.
Oh, you're right. I skipped over verse 12. You're right. You're right. Okay, I'll get back to that one. Anything you want to get on to verse 13?
Well, I just, Elijah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's just, I don't necessarily think that he's like entertaining this as,
Mm-hmm.
you know, most will say. Um, I don't know because I
Right.
think he's just making a comparison to what it is that he's already been explaining to them,
Right.
but in their perspective of him and what they feel he is doing. They
Right.
feel as though he is making the grave his house and that his bed is a full of darkness and things of
Mm-hmm.
that nature. So
Right.
I think that he's just making a comparison and contrasting it to what it is that his friends have been saying.
Amen. And I'm glad you're paying attention, sister, because you're right. I scrolled right past my notes on verse 12. Brother Jeffrey, go ahead, and then I'll get to verse 12.
Yeah, Jonathan, I want to go back to verse 10 for just a second. In the
Sure.
second part of that, Job says, I will not find a wise man among you. He is saying to all three of his friends, you guys don't have a nickel's worth of wisdom between all three of you.
That's right. Yep.
I mean, he is verbally tongue lashing them, but good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in his time, I mean, he has put these guys in their place and said, look, you're supposed to be my friends. As far as wisdom is concerned, he's saying to them, you're bankrupt.
Yep.
You are bankrupt of godly wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
You know the law of God, but you don't know the wisdom of God. That is, that just jumped off the page when I read it and studied it, Jonathan, because of the fact he has told his friends straight up, you guys don't have a clue.
Right.
You're clueless
Right.
as to what's going on here.
That's
But
true.
Jeffrey, you were hoping for that verse, brother. Job getting vindicated.
Yeah, no, I'm waiting. I'm still waiting. It's coming, but I'm waiting.
Yep. So back, like Mariah said, I skipped over 12, so forgive me for that. I scrolled past it. But so he just got through saying, he had just finished saying in verse 11 that his days were past and that his purposes are broken off and even the thoughts of his heart. Now in verse 12, he says, they changed the night into day. The light is short because of darkness. And now see, I think here that he's talking about it. He's talking about his friends. And I think that, so Job believes, it seems that Job believes that his friends are, I think that he believes that that his friends believe that they are doing and saying the right things. And so, and it's hard to tell because some of the things that Job says are very difficult to sort of interpret. They're really a challenge. But it likely refers to his friends attempting to sort of reinterpret his situation and trying to give, and by the way they express themselves, trying to give him hopeful assurances. But certainly for Job, it doesn't come out that way. It doesn't come out that way. And that's what I think it means when he says they changed the night, into day. In other words, Job is going through this dark period. They think that what they're saying is turning his darkness into light. In other words, they feel that Job feels that they are actually being enlightening to him. And that's what I think is happening here. The light is short because of darkness. And Job I think he's saying that they are trying to turn his night into day, and they're trying to promise him some kind of restoration. But the problem that they have been having, as we have always been discussing, is that they have been misapplying it. They have been weaponizing their words, and they've been weaponizing God's truth against Job in a fashion that is inappropriate. In other words, it wasn't applied to Job in the sense that they were using it. But I think that Job is, what it sounds to me is that he is saying that they think they're helping, but they're not. And I'm sure many of us have had these kind of circumstances. But I'm curious to hear what some of you might think about this. Sister Meg, what do you think about it?
Stepped away for a moment. One moment. You ask me a question.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. Brother Pat, what do you think? Verse 12. They changed the night into day. The light is short because of darkness. You there, brother? Hey, Pat, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Sister Elect Nav, do you have an idea? What's your thoughts on Job 17, verse 12?
Okay, my understanding of it is that, he know when you are living a righteous life, you yourself, you are living a righteous life.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it came a time in his life, and when you're living that righteous life for God and you're doing everything to please God, somehow in the back of our head, we just believe that nothing bad can happen to us.
Mm-hmm. But in Job 17:12, you have your scriptures with you?
Yes, I have it with me here.
So what do you think about Job 17, verse 12?
So I think that Job was saying that his night, they have turned his night into day, because night represent darkness and day represent light. Because if you see the verse that follows, he said light was shortened because of darkness. Light represent the works. Light represent the things he was doing that we are cut short because of darkness. I think in his low moment, he was thinking that the power of darkness was prevailing over him.
Amen. I like that, sister. That's pretty good. Brother Jeff, man of God, what do you think? I know you got some ideas.
Yeah, the only problem is that it may not be the right ones.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, man. I mean, you know me. I don't know. As I get older, I'm getting so humble that I'm not going to be able to speak one day. But because I realize the magnitude of God's greatness and glory and how much I really don't know. But anyway, I'm not trying to buy time. I'm sorry. I agree. I agree with Sister Elect Nafti. Basically, he's in darkness. They're trying to turn it to light, but they're not. Obviously, they're not, because they don't know what they're talking about. And and night does tend to encroach in the day, in a sense. I mean, as we go through the seasons, there's more times of darkness than light.
Right.
And I think it's probably deeper than what I'm even thinking. You probably have some other ideas on that I would like to hear, but that's kind of what I think too.
No, I think he's definitely talking to his friends. He says they. He goes, they changed night into day. The light is short because of darkness. So I think he's definitely talking about his friends. But I think that it seems like how if you're going through something, right, and you're talking to a friend or a family member, somebody close to you, somebody that you believe you can trust, and they're telling you things, and you in your mind are going, this is not helping. This is not helping. And your thoughts are they mean well. And it seems like Job is making a little bit of a concession in terms of his friends, almost as if he's to me, okay, it's almost as if he seems as though he's not ready to write them off completely. But he's saying, like Brother Jeffrey said, that like when he quotes verse 10, we went over that the other day, that they have no wisdom. So when you have a person who has no wisdom trying to dispense with wisdom to you, it's not beneficial. It's not helping. So I think Job is acknowledging that it almost as if he's saying they mean well, but they're missing the mark. And that's kind of what I gather from it. Brother Pat, what do you think? Pat and then Meg.
Well, I think it's weird that, I don't know, I'm putting myself in the friend's shoes. If I had a friend who was really going through it, I would go over to their place and listen to their story, nobody's even they don't ask for his input at all or his
Right.
perspective. You know, it's all talking down. It's like a one-way conversation talking at him. But when someone's going through hard times, man, there should be a lot of listening going on,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Working together, and there doesn't seem to be any of that going on.
Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't. And so, but yeah, so, and I think he's affirming that, but I think he's sort of like almost like giving them a little bit of a pass almost, it feels like. Sister Meg, what do you think? And then Mariah.
So when I read this verse a couple times, I saw that one thing that we know that is true is that Job's friends' theology is like retribution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in their minds, they're thinking they're giving Job hope, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But Job is turning around and saying, you're acting like there's daylight and that you're giving me hope,
Right.
but I am surrounded by darkness, right? And anything that's remaining in me that is light or that you think is light is fading, because it's just weird. Like, it's because it's misapplied. And so when we read these verses, we have to have the mindset that the theology is misapplied. So what Job is truly saying is he's lamenting still in this moment. You can clearly read,
Right.
but his friends are acting like they're giving Job hope, and they're not.
They're not.
You know?
They're absolutely not. They're really not. And they think they are. You know, we know people like this, and maybe it's been us too, where you can feel you're really having a profound moment, you know, or somebody thinks they're really waxing eloquent with you with their assessment of your trial and your tribulation that you're going through, and they're completely missing the mark. Job sees, you know, what I'm gathering from this verse is that he is seeing that that what they are calling in their mind as encouragement is insufficient. It's not helping. And what little light that they're offering is brief, is short-lived. That's what I think he's saying here. The light that you're offering me is short because of darkness. It doesn't quite provide the illumination that sort of takes me out of this night. It doesn't seem to bring any illumination to me whatsoever. I'm overwhelmed in darkness, and the little light that you're offering, it's not helping. You know, and so I think he's frustrated. Sister Mariah, go ahead.
Now, it kind of reminds me of the sovereignty of God. And that's because he says that they changed the night into day. And the whole entire thing that his friends have been doing is putting sin into the equation above and over God.
Right.
And what they should have been doing is putting the light before the darkness and figuring out where that is, because he goes on to say, you know, if I say to corruption, you are my father. Well, we know that he wouldn't, because we know that he believes God is his father, you know? Where is his hope then? His hope is in God, while their hope is in whatever traditions of man and the sins of the world. And that's what their focus and their wisdom comes from, is that that surface level understanding, rather than it being the day that is, or the light of God being overall more powerful.
Right.
So that's just what it made me think of.
No, I think that's interesting. I think that's very interesting. Sister Lisa, what do you think?
Well, I was listening to Mariah, and my thinking goes along with that. And mine's a little bit, what came to me is that these men seem to be, it seems to be a black and white issue for them. If Job will only confess his sin, his darkness will turn back to light. They're making it they go back to, they make the night into day, saying the light is near. If you'll only, confess, Job, the darkness will end for you. And it's like, again, that's not what's going on here. As Mariah said, we know that it's God's sovereignty, and he doesn't know what's going on, but it just made me think of, they're just, what they think is just such a simplified version. Do this and this will be the outcome.
That's
you won't
perfect.
do it. And
No, that's absolutely, I think that is exactly the case. And that really improves my thoughts. It really does. Because the problem is their premise is wrong. And because their premise is wrong, they're not really bringing any light to the situation. Their premise is that you are in darkness because of sin. But he was not in any sin. That wasn't the situation. And Job was fully convinced of that in his own heart. And we know that is true. And yet they keep making that the issue. And their assumption is that if you listen to us and how we evaluate your situation, then your darkness will give way to light. So I agree 100% with what you and Mariah are saying there. Brother Jeff, man of God, go ahead.
Just a small point. It just occurred to me as I was listening to Sister Lisa and Sister Mariah, is that this book would have been a lot shorter if, remember when Job, before they got there, Job was saying, why should I curse God? Naked I came from the womb, naked I return, blessed be the name, all that. If they had just heard that and sat down and they all started praying for God's, praying to God like we do when something bad happens. Lord, we don't understand it, but we understand that you're good and that you're sovereign and that this will work out for your glory. Right. Instead of sitting there throwing accusations, this book would have been a lot shorter.
Right.
That's all I had to add.
No, I was thinking something as you were saying about the book, the size of it. I get the impression that, when you have a book like Job, as long as it is, and also like the Psalms, there's probably a good reason why these books are so long. There's a thing that I talk about a lot with folks, and that's frequency. When you hear something enough, it really settles in. And I think that the repetition of what we are understanding Job to be going through in his suffering is good for us all. Because I don't think, I personally am 100% convinced that I will never look at suffering again the way I will after we get done with this book.
Well, I agree with you, brother, because the thing is, I'm sorry to jump back in. I just wanted to tell you that I'm in total agreement with you. And I'm not suggesting that I wish the book were short.
Right.
Psalms is very precious to me. And Psalm 119, you can spend days and days in.
Yep.
And, but the thing is, you're exactly right. The way you teach somebody is you repeat it again and again until they get it.
Yep.
And I think in this particular case that, this whole thing has always been a bone of contention. Why do good people suffer?
Right.
Why does God let good people suffer? And this book, if somebody says it to me, I said, read the book of Job.
Yep.
That's what I would say. Read the book of Job, or I'd tell them, that Job tells us all about it. That's why it was probably the first book, because what happens to us in life after we left Eden and fell from our sin nature? We started suffering.
Yep. That's interesting, brother. And I'll tell you something, because I really mean it when I say this. Like as many times as I read this book, and I'm sure you have probably more so than me, I'll never look at it again the same. I don't see myself ever being able to look at any suffering and not think about what we've heard these men talk about. I think that it has, it has made a significant and a profound impact on me going through this study and taking the time to go through all these verses, and try to have an adequate answer for them or an interpretation of them to set before all of you so that you can do the same thing. And I think that I'm sure we all feel the same way. I will never look at it again the same way. I'll never be able to just have a cursory overview when I read the scriptures of Job anymore, which should be the way we look at everything. But I never saw this book quite like I have doing this particular study. So it's a blessing. Brother Jeffrey, encouraging servant.
Jonathan, I have to admit, and I want to share this thought with you and the panel. As we're going through this book, I have to admit and confess, Jonathan, I have learned more from the mistakes and the foolishness of Job's three friends than I have from what we've studied about Job's suffering. Yes, we've studied his suffering. We're knowing the depth of it. Right. But at the same time, we're also seeing how his three friends, if we want to call them that, have totally, completely missed the mark. They have rushed to judgment. And my question to you, Jonathan, my brother, and everyone else, how many times are we guilty of that? I have to come on here and tell you all tonight, I got both of my hands up in the air because I'm guilty as charged.
Yeah.
I have rushed to judgment in a lot of things, a lot of times, and people in my life. I've had to go back, eat my words, apologize, and set things right.
Oh, man.
And again, our old buddy, at the end of every night, Jonathan, what do we always say? And don't be a Bildad. If we looked at section 18 or chapter 18, he's getting ready to open his mouth and some more stupidity getting ready to come out.
Yep.
So the lesson here for me, not only for Job, and what we've learned from Job, is the fact, don't be in such a big hurry when something goes horrifically wrong in someone's life to judge them and say, oh, you need to do this or stop doing that. No. It has, through 17 chapters, my brother, it has not occurred to any of these men that God is up to something other than what they think has happened in Job's life.
That's right.
So we need to be careful not to rush to judgment because, like I said, I'm guilty of it. I don't know about the rest of you. I'm guilty.
I'm sure every one of us has felt that to some degrees. I know that I have, and I believe that me being the person I am, it would be easy to fall into that trap. And so you really have to, when we deal with a brother or a sister, for instance, that are struggling, that we really have to be measured. See, because most of us have a tendency to want to just talk and speak for the sake of doing it. And without contemplating our words and without contemplating how our words might impact or affect the other person. And I think that it is rare for somebody to sit back for a second and go, let me, before I respond, I'm talking about as you are looking into yourself before you speak, and go, how would I like to hear this? How would I like, if I'm in this person's shoes, how would I like to take it? How would I want them to give it to me? And then to be able to process all of this in a meaningful way where you can roll it out in a very measured approach and try to bring comfort to a person. And if you start with this from the standpoint that we're to love our brothers and sisters in Christ, number one, that we're to love all people, number two, and that we are to seek to bring comfort first and foremost. And it can be difficult. Now, I'm talking about people who are in affliction, going through afflictions, and need that kind of comfort. I'm not talking about that person that's coming to you and telling you that, Christ didn't really resurrect from the dead and that he's not the Messiah and that he's not the Son of God. I'm not talking about those people. They get what they get from us. But I'm talking about those who are in a position like Job, a brother or sister, who just happen to be going through a hard time. So it can be difficult. And I think that, Jeff, what you're saying is right, that it is very easy to slip into a judgment mode. And just to be heard, just to be saying something that we think is profound, just to be trying out some new perspective on doctrine or something that we just learned that we want to try to lord over somebody. But putting their person's comfort first and learning to, like a few people in the comments were saying, learning how to listen. It can be difficult. It's difficult for me. It's difficult for all of us because we want to get our words in but what we need to do is practice being able to put as much real, good, useful content into the least amount of words. And this is what is hard for people to do. This is really difficult. And to be honest with you, it takes work to be able to be succinct. And you'd be surprised at how powerful being succinct can be if what you're saying, it communicates what brings comfort. But even when you teach, the objective is to try to be as economical with words as possible. Make them count. Say less and make them count. And it will. It will matter. So in verse 13, we kind of went over that because I went out of order, thanks to Mariah putting me back on track. But I'll read verse 13 again, then we'll get into verse 14. Job says, if I wait, the grave is my house. I've made my bed in the darkness. So we kind of went over that already. Verse 14, he continues, I have said to corruption, you are my father. To the worm, you are my mother and my sister. Sister Sean, what do you think about that?
I think it's like this poetic imagery of burial, right? Because he says that the grave is my home, and the worm is my mother and sister, and he personifies the worms as his family, because that the body returns to the dust, that whole process, and he feels like he identifies with death as his only certainty. And I think, just like Job, most of us realize that the only thing guaranteed in this life is death.
Right.
And so that's how I see that. He sees death as his only home. He's really deep in that grief.
Yep, absolutely. Meg, what do you think about it? Verse 14. Meg, you there? All right. Brother Pat, what do you think?
My flesh does not like hearing what I just hear. It's so funny how, as a human being, when somebody says something like the only day that's guaranteed, the only thing that's guaranteed in this life is death, and shivers went up my spine. Isn't it interesting how that reality, that's a tough pill to swallow.
It is.
And I think the sister is right on. He's almost feeling resigned to, this is my fate. He doesn't understand, but this is,
right.
Life used to be my family, and now I'm in the dirt and with the worms.
Yep. Yeah, you're right, brother. And I think what Sean said is makes sense. Like, she talks about how he's speaking sort of in this poetic way. And I think that he's speaking in a sense like, here's how I look at it. Cause I do think this is very strong, figurative language that I think he's using, which is relevant because he's talking about something real. He's talking about something real. He's speaking about himself, nearing corruption, being, turning, decaying. That's what he sees himself as doing. But notice what I find interesting here is that he says, I have said to corruption. So I don't know if his friends are hearing this. I suppose they are. I don't know, but I think they are hearing this. But he says, I have said to corruption, you are my father. And to the worm, you are my mother and my sister. And so what I think Job is saying is a slap in the face to his friends, because he's saying, you guys should have come here with the goal to help, to comfort me, to help me wade through this dark time. My family is all gone. My wife has turned on me. My children have all passed. And so he's telling his friends, so you were all that I had left. And now you come here and condemn me with these false accusations, and you are not bringing any light to my darkness. So now Job is saying, so now I don't even have you. So now what he's saying is, my best and closest relationships that I find to be akin to my father and mother or sister is corruption.